Many people will know that the Lincoln-Douglas debates took place, but fewer will know or can tell you the background behind them. Before I tell you what took place at the debates, I first need to introduce you to each of the debaters. Stephen Douglas was born in Vermont and moved to Illinois in 1833 when he was 20 years old. When he arrived, he had no friends. In the first year, he was practicing law in Morgan County. He grew to admire Andrew Jackson, and his defense of him got him the nickname the Little Giant. Douglas quickly became one of the nation's most powerful politicians. He was eventually known as one of the finest legislators in Illinois history. Douglas served as Secretary of State from 1840 until he was appointed to the Illinois Supreme Congress in 1843. In 1847, he became a senator and served through the difficult years before the Civil War. When Douglas ran for re-election of the United States Senate in 1858, his opponent was a little-known lawyer named Abraham Lincoln. The debates the two politicians conducted during the campaigns are now some of the most famous debates known. Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809, in a log cabin in Kentucky. In 1816, his family moved to Indiana because land ownership was easier and the state forbade slavery in the area. In 1830, the Lincoln family left Indiana for Illinois. Lincoln ran but did not get elected into the Illinois legislature in 1832. 2 years later, he was elected into the lower house for the first of 4 successive terms as a Whig. He became a lawyer in 1836 and moved to Springfield. Lincoln served 1 term as a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. After his term, he returned to Springfield and the law. Because of the Kansas-Nebraska Act passed by Congress in 1854, which opened lands previously closed to slavery, Lincoln decided that he needed to get involved in politics again. Lincoln ran for the U.S. Senate in 1855 as a Whig but did not get elected. In 1856, he joined the newly formed Republican Party, and 2 years later, he campaigned for the Senate against Douglas. As the underdog in the campaign, Lincoln needed a way to compete against Douglas's fame, and so appeared with him in a series of debates. Lincoln first suggested the series of 7 debates. In agreeing to the debates, Lincoln and Douglas decided to hold 1 debate in each of the 9 congressional districts in Illinois. Because both had already spoken into Springfield and Chicago, they decided that their joint appearances would be held in the remaining 7 districts. The debates were held in 7 towns in the state of Illinois: Ottawa, Freeport, Jonesburg, Charleston, Galesburg, Quincy, and Alton. Each debate was held in a similar structure. First, one candidate would speak for an hour, then the other would speak for an hour and 30 minutes. The first candidate then had another 30 minutes to respond to what the second had said. In this manner, Douglas spoke first 4 of the 7 debates. Lincoln-Douglas speech debate is structured in the same way that one person will read their case, then the second will read their case and have time to answer Lincoln what the and Douglas had agreed to host their debates. They decided to start out with the town Ottawa on August 21st, and that was to be the first place where they held their debate. One of the main topics throughout all of the debates was slavery. Slavery was a very big part in this time right before the Civil War, and they were talking about that as especially being one of the main reasons why Lincoln came back into politics was to try and help get rid of slavery or stop the spreading of slavery, although he was not technically an abolitionist. You can see another large word on this is the word judge, and you can see that Douglas is very small. That is because Lincoln referred to Douglas as Judge Douglas and the judge a lot more than just using his first name, which is very interesting. They also talked a lot about their parties, and you can see that Republican came up, and Whig, which Lincoln was previously a Whig, and they talked about a lot of the states. So this first debate had a lot of things going on in it. Now, after the success of the first debate, they continued on to Johannesburg on September 15th to continue on with the second debate. This is the next picture that I have of all the speeches put together. As you can see, they are talking about Mr. Lincoln a lot, and slavery is still a very large word, but you can also see that union is now, it was still in the last one, but now it is a lot bigger. And we are still talking about all the states and the resolutions, and you can also see that Douglas has gotten smaller, and over here Judge is still bigger than Douglas, assuming that Lincoln is still calling him Judge Douglas and calling him by Judge. And we are talking about the Constitution in many ways, so it is continuing on to different things, but slavery still remains a major issue. After the success of the first two debates, Lincoln and Douglas continued on to Charleston on September 18th for the next round of debates. And in this next slide, you can see that Lincoln is not becoming as big of an issue, but you can still see that Judge is still one of the biggest words I am interpreting, which Lincoln referring to as Douglas, and slavery is still out there, although not one of the main things. They seem to still be talking about what's best for the states, and the Constitution is being pulled into a lot of this, as well as Congress, to try and look at things. Now continue on to the next debate, which is in Galesburg on October 7th. We now have a special guest, as you can guess from our graph, kind of. His name is Trumbull. He was brought in to talk after both of theirs to give another speech, but in the actual debating made by Lincoln and Douglas, you can see that Douglas is now showing up to be a larger word, and that the word bill was brought up a lot more, being that you probably talking about what bills they were going to pass or try to get passed. And you can see that slavery is not a very big issue on this one, which is interesting because that has showed up in many of them, but they are talking about something different in this one. In concluding the last three debates, we are seeing that even though it was a very close race, Douglas eventually pulled out, and even though our favorite candidate, President Lincoln did not win, during all these debates, the press from all of the different things from going on these debates gave him a lot of press and really got his name out there that he needed to be able to run for the presidency. And even people from other states outside of Illinois even showed up for the last two debates, and it put them on a big schedule on what he was doing. And so even though it was not a success for Lincoln, it eventually put him on a good track that he needed to be, and so that we would have our president that we would greatly admire and that many of us would consider to be our best one.